A very good morning, and thank you very much for joining us on GBS Morning Extra this day. It is Tuesday, and it's a day that many Kenyans have anticipated and waited for. It is a day that the team that is led by Yusuf Haji will be presenting the findings or the report filed by them to the President on the BBI report. But viewers or the public will have to wait until Wednesday, when the report will be made public at the Bomas of Kenya by the President himself. But then we will be keeping a close eye on that story, and we will be bringing you more in terms of discussions and also on filing of stories. But this morning, we start with first things first. Kenya is facing a tragedy right now, and bad weather forced Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i's chopper to take an emergency landing in Eldoret. Matiang'i, who was accompanied by Eugene Wamalwa and the IG of police, were forced to take an emergency landing after bad weather advice. So let's listen in to this.
We have been planning to go to West Pokot since Saturday when it actually happened, and we've been waiting to be advised when it's safe to fly there, because we know the terrain. It is when it rains very heavily, it gets very dense, there is no visibility, and for pilots it's very difficult to go in. And the quickest and safest means of getting us to the ground to see what was going on and at least have a feel on our own was to fly there. But then we took a decision on Saturday that let's give priority to the relief teams and the emergency teams that were going to go in, so that we also do not distract, because when we go there, attention of the security people comes to us instead of focusing on those who have been injured and so on. So we waited for clearance. We were still advised it was not safe. So yesterday, IG and our security team said we could try to go in today. And we left Nairobi at 8:30 in the morning. We had two aircrafts. Our police plane was ahead of us to carry the regional security team, and the Air Force helicopter that carried my colleague and I to go in. So we made very good progress actually until after Nakuru, as we were now moving towards the north. It was very difficult. The pilots could not see. It was fairly dangerous. Already advice had been given to us by the other aircraft that it's very dangerous to go in, so we have to find a place and hold on and wait until it clears before we can go in. So we were forced to land in Eldoret, and we waited on the ground quite a while. We were on the ground for nearly about 2 hours until we were told it hasn't cleared, and towards the afternoon it actually even gets worse. We are going to try again tomorrow. We'll wait and be told if it's safe to go in tomorrow. We are going to try again tomorrow and the day after, because we believe it is our responsibility. We want to go in there and see for ourselves, and sit with the county government leaders and try to work with them and see how far we can support them. And most importantly, ensure that the teams we have on the ground, the security teams, the groups that have marshaled humanitarian support are well taken care of. But since this happened, you have been following this since Saturday, the President ordered a multi-agency team to go in, comprising of KDF, police, our national disaster response teams, and we have been having people working in that area. Truth be told, the weather has made it a nightmare to operate in that place. It's been such a frustration to everyone. The road was cut in 2 different places. Kenya worked around the clock on Saturday to try to repair one bridge, and our colleagues from KDF went in to try and repair one bridge so that we are able to at least move supplies to the affected people. If you understand the terrain, the way it is, and where people were swept down to, we've been discussing that even when we were in Nakuru all the time. How would you actually go in? Because the cliffs are very, very deep. And then there is no other way of going there. Once you get close to the place, people have to go in on foot to do the work. A lot of good work is going on. The relief teams that are there, mobilized from the security agencies. My colleague, the Inspector General, will talk briefly about that. A lot of good work is going on there. We are most probably going to increase the numbers. We actually want to meet right now, get the latest update from the ground, and see how we can move numbers, the numbers that can move on foot, those that can be moved like from Eldoret and other places, so that we can provide sufficient support to the people in that area. The weather and the terrain have made it, as I said, a nightmare to operate in that place. So I have to be very honest with you. I feel very disappointed but frustrated. I would have loved to be there, and so you can imagine how I feel. And you know, my colleague Eugene and I, IG, we've been wanting to go in since Saturday. In fact, Eugene happened to be in Kitale. He attempted to go in. We were talking all the time, and it was very difficult to go in because of the dangerous terrain. So we will try again tomorrow. We'll wait for clearance by our colleagues, and if they tell us we can go in, maybe actually we thought that if we left a bit early, like 8 o'clock, we would have had a benefit of half an hour so that we can go in before it becomes a bit difficult. We are going to try again tomorrow. We'll wait for advice tonight and what our colleagues in the security team tell us, and then we'll try tomorrow. Maybe we try earlier, try to get there.
Well, CS Fred Matiang'i, they are giving an update on how they are proceeding in terms of preparation to also go and make sure that everything works in West Pokot. His flight cut short by the bad weather, and they are hopefully trying to reach West Pokot today if the weather allows them to do so. But as he mentioned, rescue teams are already on the ground. A number of KDF and police forces and the emergency response team are already there, but then the terrain and the bad weather is still also not allowing them to do their job adequately. But we do hope that the weather calms down and that rescue operation is allowed to continue, and so that the families also that are worried about the missing people can get some kind of reprieve or relief. Well, still on bad weather, a family of 5 members died on Sunday night after their car was swept away by flash floods at the Ngatatek area in Kajiado County. They were from Namanga heading to Iblis when the car was swept away at the flooded Ngatatek River Bridge. In the 9 p.m. incident, a middle-aged woman, her 3 children and brother-in-law, who was the driver of the car, of the ill-fated car, was swept 70 meters downstream. The family was traveling home from a wedding when the unfortunate incident occurred amid heavy rainfall.
Ilinyesha mingi pande ya Ngatatek na ikawa na mafuriko kwa kila mto, na watu gari moja ambaye ya kampuni inaitwa Nailiapu Sacco ilibebwa usiku wa jana. Watu 5 wakafariki wa familia moja, na tukaamkia leo tukapata ripoti kwamba watu 5 walifariki, walibebwa na hiyo pia kwa hiyo gari ya Nailiapu Sacco. Tuko na mtoto ambaye mtoto wa miaka 5 alifariki, kwa jina ni Mboro Wanjuku Joyce ambaye ni mama yao. Ni watoto ni 2 na mama yao ambaye na kasini yao ambaye alikuja kuwatembelea. Watu walifariki kwa mto wa Ngatatek kwa mafuriko. So tunaonya wananchi, ama tunawapatia wananchi, tunataka kuwaeleza wananchi wajihatari sana na wakati huu wa mvua, wa msimu wa mvua, sababu saa hii msimu wa mvua yuko mafuriko mengi. Ukiona maji mahali yuko, unaweza simama mahali na ungoje ipite. Mito ya hapa ni mito ya ambaye ni seasonal rivers, ambaye maji ikikuja inapita. So tunaonya wananchi kwamba ukipita mahali ukiona maji, mito ama sio mito, mahali popote ni mzuri ujihatari, usimame uone uzito ya maji huo, na ukiona unaweza pita unapita, na kama sivyo unangojea.
Well, quite unfortunate. We now move away from that and look at the political scene, where the political stage is set as the team that was mandated to compile the Building Bridges Initiative report prepares to release it today. The Yusuf Haji-led task force team will hand over the report, to President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House, Nairobi today, whereafter the president will be releasing the report to Kenyans tomorrow at the Bomas of Kenya.
Last week said he was ready to receive the report and urged all Kenyans to read and understand it to enable them to make an informed decision. Eventually, the report will be proposing a national referendum to alter the constitution and in what sections of leaders allied to Deputy President William Ruto are opposed to.
Yenye haina chuki, yenye haina propaganda, yenye haina porojo. Sisi wote tunataka kwa heshima tujadiliane kama Wakenya, tutafute suluhu ya yale mambo ambayo ni changamoto kwetu, tukipeleka taifa letu mbele. Na ya muhimu kwa haya mambo ni mambo ya maendeleo ya taifa letu la Kenya.
The task force was formed soon after a handshake between President Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, following long-standing political differences. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga said the BBI report will not disrupt the country's development. MP Nyoro cautioned politicians against using BBI to settle political scores, saying such a scheme will not succeed. He said Kenyans will have the final say on either the adoption or the rejection of the long-awaited reports. On their part, Gachagua and Ichung'wah said Kenyans were more interested in development. He said it was not practical to have a referendum before 2022 at a time Kenya was under financial strain. Kuria warned that some of the leaders that were fronting the idea of a review of the constitution were not committed to the country's unity. Reporting for GBS Morning Extra, I'm Mary Vuguza.
2022 itakuwa.
Now, away from politics, and we cross borders now to another tragic incident. At least 23 people lost their lives on Sunday when a small plane crashed into houses in a densely populated area of the city of Goma in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The dead are believed to include all those on board the plane as well as people on the ground.
Goma Rescue Service Coordinator Joseph Makundi told AFP that there are up to 23 bodies as authority work to recover more bodies at the crash site. Images from the scene showed plumes of black smoke and flames, apparently from the burning plane, as locals looked on. Rescue workers were also seen combing through the plane's burned-out fuselage. Goma Airport official Richard Mangolopa told AFP no survivors were expected from the disaster. The Dornier 228 aircraft had been headed for the city of Beni, 350 kilometers north of Goma, when it went down after takeoff in a residential area near the airport in the east of the country. BZB airline staff members said that there were 17 passengers on board and 2 crew members. BZB is a young company that boasts 3 planes serving routes in the North Kivu province. The governor for North Kivu, Kali Nzanzu Kasivita, in a statement said that the pilot failed to take off. One of the company's maintenance workers at the site quoted that the plane had a technical problem. The precise number of casualties on the plane and on the ground was not yet known. The UN Mission Development in DR Congo, MONUSCO, sent 2 fire engines to support local rescue services. Aircraft accidents are common in the vast, conflict-racked Central African country, in particular involving Antonov planes. Last month, an Antonov 7-2 cargo plane that was providing logistical assistance for a trip by Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and carrying 8 crew and passengers went missing after taking off from Goma. In September 2017, an Antonov cargo plane chartered by the army crashed near the capital Kinshasa, killing all 12 people on board. Reporting for GBS Morning Extra, I'm William Ochanda.
Now, the territory sees a recorded turnout of more than 71% scores of pro-Beijing candidates lose their seats. Pro-democracy candidates in Hong Kong have scored a huge victory in the council's elections, winning nearly 90% of the seats. We remember that Hong Kong have seen months of protest in the streets against China.
The candidates in Hong Kong have scored a huge victory in district council elections, winning nearly 90% of the seats. They won around 390 of 452 seats, according to local broadcaster RTHK, up from around 100 4 years ago. A record 1,104 candidates stood in the poll, and the turnout was the highest ever at 71%, equating to almost 3 million people. Last time, it was 47%. One seat was still to be declared because of a request for a recount. The elections took a new significance because of months of clashes between Hong Kong authorities and protesters who said the Chinese government is eroding the territory's freedoms. The territory's 18th council have little power, but the vote was seen by many as a gauge of public opinion on the protests. Among the winning candidates were rally organizer Jimmy Sham, who was beaten by people with hammers last month, and a candidate who had part of his ear beaten off by an attacker. One of those to lose his seat was pro-Beijing politician Junius Ho, who was stabbed with a knife while campaigning this month. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam said the government respected the outcome and will listen to the opinions of the members of the public humbly and seriously reflect. She said she hoped the peaceful, safe and orderly situation in which the elections took place would continue. Winning candidates must now meet the demands of the people, such as free elections for the city's leader and legislature, and a probe into claims of police brutality. Henry Sin Ho Fai, one of the winners, said that they have won the battle today, but it shows that Hong Kong have a chance to win the war and that they will fight on. The council election is the only fully democratic one in Hong Kong. The voting passed off peacefully with long queues to vote and hardly anyone wearing the mask associated with the protesters. The candidates for the next year's Legislative Council elections are drawn from the elected councillors. Reporting for GBS Morning Extra, I'm William Ochanda.
Now, moving on, the first ever global trends for adolescent insufficient physical activity shows that urgent action is needed to increase physical activity levels in girls and boys aged between 11 and 17. The study, published in the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health Journal and produced by the researcher for the World Health Organization, finds that more than 80% of school-going adolescents globally did not meet the current recommendation that at least 1 hour of physical activity per day, including 85% of girls and 78% of boys.
Globally, 81% of adolescents aged 11 to 17 do not meet the WHO recommendations on physical activity, and that is to do 1 hour of activity each day or more. And that could be any type of physical activity. It could be walking or riding a bike to school, could be active play, could be physical education class, could be anything. So our finding shows really that 4 out of 5 adolescents do not meet these guidelines and therefore do not get a health benefit from physical activity.
One of the driving factors is an increase in digital technology that's accessible to young people, so more screen time, using their devices more rather than active play. Security also seems to be a bit of an issue, that young people maybe don't feel safe enough to be outside running or walking in parks, places where we'd like them to be more active. That urban design hasn't really encouraged walking and cycling, and that road traffic congestion is also forcing people off young people off the street. And then finally, in this age group, one of the concerns we have is the amount of time young people are required to devote to academic study, homework, sitting at school, and so less time for active play and activities with their friends.
Despite WHO member states signing up for a target to reduce insufficient activity by 15% by 2030, we have not seen major improvements globally in reduction of insufficient physical activity. In fact, In boys, we see a tiny improvement. The prevalence went from about 80% in 2001 to about 78% in 2016. So it's still very high and the improvement is small, but we do not see any improvement in girls, where the prevalence of insufficient activity stayed at around 85%, not meeting the WHO recommendations for physical activity.
And finally, escalating violence continues to displace more families in Idlib's governorate in northwest Syria. Many of them are seeking refuge in informal settlements close to the border with Turkey, where children are helping their families build shelters to protect themselves from the winter cold. Out of 400,000 people who have been displaced in northwest Syria in recent months, nearly 150,000 are uprooted children who have dropped out of school and are coping with the extremely harsh living conditions, in addition to the loss and trauma. Well, quite unfortunate there. The war in Syria continues to displace more people. We do hope that also in that country, in the Middle Eastern country, that peace will be found. A change of regime has always been what many people have proposed in terms of regaining peace in that country, but still we wait to see what the resolution by the United Nations is, despite the fightings or the disagreements between NATO, Russia and other key players who have interest in the region. But that is for another day. For now, we do take a short break and then we'll be back with our discussion for the day. Today we'll be hosting a gentleman and a lady who will, just shedding more light on what to do or how they do their work in terms of, putting a smile in children's face and making them feel happier. I'm talking about children who live in home shelters or in orphanages. Now, for now, we do take a short break, but before we do that, let's take a look at what happened today in history. Well, viewer, we have come to the end of this first part of our program this morning. And as I mentioned earlier, we are going to host today a gentleman and a lady who are going to shed more light on what they do to put a smile on children's faces. These are children who are orphaned, who also live in shelters. But for now, let's say goodbye to our sign language interpreter, Felista Adundu. Well, see you again tomorrow, Felista. And viewer, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with our discussion in a bit.